What do you call a wrestler who was built like a Greek god, moved like a panther, and could work a match better than most main eventers, but never won a major singles championship in WWE or WCW? You call him Butch Reed, and his story will make you question everything you think you know about what it takes to succeed in wrestling. Reed had the look, the skills, and the credibility, but something always held him back from breaking through to that next level. Was it politics, timing, or something darker? This is the story of a man who started with every advantage an athlete could want. Bruce Franklin Reed stood 6 feet 2 inches tall and weighed 262 pounds of pure muscle when the Kansas City Chiefs signed him in 1976. He was a hometown kid from Missouri who had dominated at the University of Central Missouri. Reed played linebacker and had the kind of speed and power that NFL scouts drooled over. His college coaches thought he had what it took to make it in professional football. Reed thought so too. The Chiefs brought Reed into training camp that summer. He was living his dream, playing for his home state team just a few hours from where he grew up. Reed had the physical tools that NFL teams wanted. He could run, he could hit, and he had that competitive fire that separates good players from great ones. Everything seemed to be falling into place for the young athlete from Missouri. Then came the phone call that changed everything. The Chiefs cut Reed before the regular season started. Just like that, his NFL dream was over. Reed found himself back in Kansas City with no team, no contract, and no clear path forward. He was 22 years old and facing the reality that his football career might be finished before it really began. Most guys in Reed's position would have found a regular job and moved on with their lives. Reed wasn't most guys. He had spent his entire life competing at the highest levels of athletics. The idea of settling into a normal 9-to-5 job didn't appeal to him. Reed wanted to find another way to use his athletic gifts and competitive nature. That's when wrestling trainer Ronnie Etchison entered Reed's life. Etchison had been watching Reed during his football days and saw something special in the young athlete. Reed had the size that wrestling promoters wanted, but more importantly, he had the natural athleticism that couldn't be taught. Etchison approached Reed about trying professional wrestling. Reed's football background gave him advantages that most wrestling trainees didn't have. His athletic foundation allowed him to pick up techniques quickly and understand the physical demands of the business. This natural ability would prove crucial as he developed his wrestling skills under Etchison's guidance. The mental transition from team sport to individual competition proved more challenging for Reed. In football, success depended on 11 players working together toward a common goal. Wrestling was different. Reed had to learn to rely entirely on himself and develop the confidence to carry entire matches on his own shoulders. Etchison put Reed through months of training before allowing him to work his first match. Reed learned how to take bumps without getting injured, how to work with different types of opponents, and most importantly, how to tell stories through physical action. Football had been about winning games, but wrestling was about entertaining audiences while making everything look real. Reed made his professional wrestling debut in 1978, working under his real name, Bruce Reed. Even in those early matches, experienced wrestlers could see that Reed was different from typical rookies. He moved with natural grace for a man his size. His athletic background showed in everything he did, from how he entered the ring to how he executed even basic wrestling moves. Local promoters started taking notice of the young wrestler who could work like a veteran despite being new to the business. Reed's football reputation in Missouri helped draw some initial interest, but it was his performance in the ring that kept fans coming back. He had a presence that you couldn't teach, and athletic ability that set him apart from other wrestlers in the territory. Reed's early matches showcased a wrestling style that combined power moves with surprising agility. He could overpower smaller opponents, but also had the speed to keep up with faster wrestlers. This versatility made him valuable to promoters who were always looking for wrestlers who could work with anyone on their roster. The foundation that Reed built during his football career became the cornerstone of everything he would accomplish in wrestling. His understanding of competition, his natural athleticism, and his ability to perform under pressure had been developed on football fields across Missouri. Now those same qualities were about to take him on a journey through the wrestling territories. Reed was ready to prove that his transition from gridiron to squared circle was more than just a career change. It was the beginning of something that would showcase talents most fans had never seen before. Reed's partnership with Jerry Roberts in 1980 marked a turning point that most wrestling fans never saw coming. The two wrestlers captured the NWA Central States Tag Team Championship that year, giving Reed his first taste of championship gold. This wasn't just another territory title. The Central States territory covered Kansas, Missouri, and parts of surrounding states where Reed had built his reputation. Winning this championship proved Reed could work effectively with a partner and carry his share of a tag team division. Jerry Roberts was an experienced wrestler who had been working the territories for years. Together, they developed the tag team psychology that would serve Reed throughout his career. Reed discovered how to work the crowd during extended sequences where his partner was getting beaten down. He learned when to make the hot tag and how to time his entrance for maximum impact. These lessons in crowd manipulation would become essential tools in Reed's wrestling arsenal. The Central States Championship reign established Reed as a reliable wrestler who could be trusted with meaningful storylines. Reed's combination of legitimate athletic credentials and improving wrestling skills made him an attractive prospect for other NWA territories looking for fresh talent. Reed's next major move took him to Florida Championship Wrestling, where he formed a partnership with Sweet Brown Sugar. Florida was known as one of the most competitive wrestling territories in the country. The promotion regularly featured established stars and up-and-coming talent from around the world. Reed's decision to work in Florida showed his ambition to test himself against higher levels of competition. The partnership with Sweet Brown Sugar clicked immediately. The two wrestlers had contrasting styles that worked well together in the ring. Sweet Brown Sugar brought technical expertise, while Reed provided power and athleticism. Their chemistry was obvious to fans and promoters who watched them work together during their early matches in the territory. Their biggest test came when they were booked to face wrestling royalty in the form of Dory Funk Jr. and David Von Erich. Dory Funk Jr. was a former NWA World Heavyweight Champion and one of the most respected wrestlers in the business. David Von Erich came from the famous Von Erich wrestling family and was considered one of the top young stars in wrestling. Defeating this team would be a major accomplishment for any wrestlers, especially for Reed, who was still establishing his credibility. Reed and Sweet Brown Sugar shocked the wrestling world in 1982 when they defeated Funk and Von Erich to win the Florida version of the NWA North American Tag Team Championship. This victory sent a message throughout the wrestling territories that Reed was ready for main event competition. The win over such established names proved Reed could perform under pressure against proven stars. But Reed's breakthrough moment came on April 7, 1982 in Miami, when he challenged Ric Flair for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. Flair was at the peak of his powers as champion and was widely considered the best wrestler in the world. Getting a title shot against Flair was recognition that Reed had arrived as a legitimate main event performer. The match itself became legendary in wrestling circles. Reed went toe-to-toe with Flair in a contest that showcased everything both men could do in the ring. Reed demonstrated that he belonged in the same ring as the world champion through his technical wrestling ability and natural understanding of match psychology. He knew when to control the pace and when to let Flair take over to build drama. Dave Meltzer later recognized this match as the first contest ever to receive his 5-star rating. This rating system would become the gold standard for evaluating wrestling matches. Reed's performance against Flair proved he could work at the highest level of professional wrestling and deliver classic matches when given the opportunity. The match showed Reed's unique blend of power wrestling and athletic grace that separated him from typical territory heavyweights. He could overpower opponents when necessary, but also had the technical skills to work complex sequences with the best wrestlers in the world. This versatility made him valuable to any promoter who needed wrestlers capable of working different styles. Word about Reed's abilities spread quickly throughout the NWA territories after his performance against Flair. His championship victories and 5-star match had established his credibility beyond question. One promoter in particular was taking notice of Reed's combination of athletic ability and proven track record with established stars. Bill Watts had built Midsouth Wrestling into one of the most respected territories in professional wrestling by focusing on athletic competition and realistic storytelling. When he brought Reed into the promotion in 1983, Watts saw something that other promoters had missed. Reed wasn't just another big athlete trying to make it in wrestling. He had the combination of legitimate athletic credentials, proven wrestling ability, and natural charisma that Watts needed to create compelling storylines. Reed's initial role in Midsouth was as an ally of the Junkyard Dog, one of the most beloved wrestlers in the territory. JYD was a fan favorite who represented everything good about competitive athletics. Reed appeared to be cut from the same cloth, another heroic athlete who would fight alongside JYD against the villains of Midsouth wrestling. Fans welcomed Reed as someone who could help their hero in his battles against the bad guys. The partnership began to fracture when Jim Duggan was chosen over Reed as Junkyard Dog's primary tag team partner. This decision left Reed feeling overlooked despite his proven abilities and growing reputation in the territory. Reed's frustration became public when he announced on television that Butch Reed was going to start looking out for Butch Reed. This declaration marked the beginning of his transformation from ally to antagonist. The heel turn became complete when Reed attacked the Junkyard Dog, with Ted DiBiase joining in the assault. This betrayal shocked fans who had expected Reed to continue supporting JYD in his battles against the territory's villains. Reed had crossed the line from frustrated partner to outright enemy, prioritizing his own ambitions over his former friendship. Reed captured the Mid-South North American Heavyweight Championship on July 16, 1983, establishing himself as the territory's top singles star. His championship reign was marked by successful title defenses against challengers including the Junkyard Dog, who sought revenge for Reed's betrayal. Reed proved he could back up his new arrogant attitude with victories over the wrestlers fans loved most. The championship victory established Reed as the kind of heel that Mid-South wrestling needed. He possessed genuine athletic superiority that made his arrogance believable, but he wasn't above using underhanded tactics when necessary. Reed's combination of legitimate wrestling ability and willingness to bend the rules made fans respect and hate him simultaneously. He could outrun most wrestlers despite his size and deliver power moves more devastating than typical heavyweights. Reed's success continued when he partnered with Jim Neidhart to capture the Mid-South Tag Team Championship by defeating Magnum TA and Jim Duggan. This victory demonstrated Reed's ability to dominate multiple divisions simultaneously. He could excel as a singles wrestler while also working effectively in tag team competition. Reed was proving himself to be one of the most versatile wrestlers in the territory. The brutal matches against Magnum TA showcased everything that made Mid-South wrestling special under Bill Watts' leadership. These contests featured hard-hitting action that looked and felt real. Reed and Magnum TA hit each other with stiff strikes that made fans wince. Their matches included dramatic near falls that had audiences believing either man could win. This style of athletic competition set Mid-South apart from other wrestling territories. Reed also developed compelling feuds with Ted DiBiase and other top Mid-South stars, creating a network of rivalries that kept him busy across multiple storylines. His athletic background and competitive intensity fit perfectly with Watts' vision of presenting wrestling as legitimate athletic competition rather than pure entertainment. Reed wasn't just playing a character, he was a real athlete competing against other real athletes in contests that felt genuine. Reed's matches helped establish Mid-South's reputation for realistic competition that influenced wrestling for decades. His dominance in both singles and tag team competition made him the perfect target for multiple challengers. Reed's combination of genuine athletic ability and heelish tactics made fans want to see him get beaten, but his skills made those victories difficult to achieve. Reed had evolved from a football player trying wrestling into one of the most credible and athletic heels in the business. He became the perfect villain for Bill Watts' vision of realistic competition. His presence elevated every wrestler who worked with him while establishing Mid-South wrestling as the territory where real athletes settled their differences. But Reed's competitive nature and willingness to do whatever it took to win would soon create conflicts that went beyond simple wrestling storylines. Reed had adopted the Hacksaw nickname early in his wrestling career when Jim Duggan arrived in Midsouth carrying the same moniker and the attitude to match. Both men were tough, athletic competitors who had legitimate reasons to claim the name. Reed felt he had established himself in Midsouth first and deserved to keep using the nickname that had become part of his identity. Duggan wasn't about to back down from anyone, especially not over something as personal as his wrestling name. What started as a professional disagreement over the shared nickname quickly escalated into something much more personal and dangerous. Reed and Duggan were both alpha personalities who had spent their lives competing at the highest levels of athletics. Neither man was accustomed to backing down from confrontation. The naming dispute became a test of wills between two wrestlers who genuinely seemed to believe they were tougher than the other. Their first matches revealed that this feud would be different from typical wrestling rivalries. Reed and Duggan weren't interested in showcasing technical wrestling moves or elaborate storylines. They wanted to hurt each other. Every encounter between them felt like a legitimate fight that happened to take place in a wrestling ring. The traditional rules of wrestling seemed secondary to proving who was the superior physical specimen. Reed's athletic superiority clashed directly with Duggan's blue-collar toughness in ways that created compelling television. Reed could outrun Duggan, outmuscle most opponents, and execute more complex wrestling maneuvers. But Duggan possessed an almost supernatural ability to absorb punishment and keep fighting. Reed's polished athletic skills met their match against Duggan's raw determination and refusal to stay down. Duggan's positioning as part of the heel group, the Rat Pack, alongside Ted DiBiase and Matt Bourne, gave him license to use every dirty move he could think of against Reed. This approach created matches that felt more like genuine conflicts than wrestling contests. Duggan would resort to eye gouges, low blows, and illegal chokes to gain advantages over Reed's superior athleticism. Reed responded with equal intensity, refusing to be intimidated by Duggan's willingness to break the rules. The intensity of their rivalry made fans question how much of the animosity was real. Reed and Duggan sold their hatred for each other so convincingly that audiences weren't sure where the performance ended and genuine dislike began. Their confrontations had an unpredictable quality that made every encounter must-see television for Midsouth wrestling fans. Reed's competitive nature drove him to escalate the feud beyond what most wrestlers would consider acceptable. He seemed genuinely angry that anyone would challenge his right to use the Hacksaw name. Duggan responded with equal intensity, refusing to be intimidated by Reed's athletic credentials or championship success. Both men appeared to take the rivalry personally in ways that went beyond normal wrestling storylines. The feud tapped into real competitive tensions that existed between two wrestlers who represented different approaches to professional wrestling. Reed embodied the polished athlete who had transitioned from legitimate sports into wrestling. Duggan represented the working-class tough guy who had earned everything through sheer determination. Their clash symbolized a broader conflict about what wrestling should be and who deserved to succeed. The dynamic between Reed and Duggan created confusion among fans who weren't sure which wrestler they should support. Reed was clearly the more accomplished athlete, but Duggan's willingness to use every dirty move he could think of made him compelling in his own way. This uncertainty added layers to their rivalry that kept audiences invested in the outcome of their matches. The situation became more complicated when Duggan's character began evolving from heel to fan favorite. This shift resulted in Reed's heel turn when Duggan was picked to be the Junkyard Dog's tag team partner over Reed. Reed felt he deserved the opportunity to partner with JYD based on his athletic ability and championship credentials. Duggan's selection seemed to suggest that popularity and fan connection mattered more than pure wrestling skill. Their rivalry helped establish the template for Midsouth's realistic, hard-hitting style that would influence wrestling for decades. Other promotions began copying the intense personal feuds that felt more like real conflicts than entertainment. Reed and Duggan showed that wrestling could be compelling when it felt genuine rather than scripted. The intensity of this rivalry became the standard by which all future Reed feuds were measured. But it also revealed that Reed's willingness to push boundaries could create situations that went beyond typical wrestling storylines. Reed's competitive drive soon found a new outlet when he became involved in one of Midsouth Wrestling's most controversial storylines. The Stagger Lee angle pushed the promotion into territory that most wrestling companies wouldn't touch. Reed and Buddy Landel attacked JYD as he performed under a mask as Stagger Lee and painted him yellow during the assault, creating a visual that shocked audiences and generated intense reactions. The humiliation aspect of the attack went beyond typical wrestling storylines into something that felt genuinely cruel. Reed's portrayal of the masked attacker was so convincing that fans genuinely hated him for what he had done to their beloved hero. He sold the brutality of the attack with a level of realism that made audiences question whether he was acting or revealing his true personality. Reed's ability to generate such intense heat demonstrated his understanding of crowd psychology, but it also raised questions about the methods he was willing to use to get reactions from fans. The aftermath of the Stagger Lee attack led to dog collar matches between Reed and the Junkyard Dog that were among the most brutal contests in Mid-South wrestling history. These matches featured both wrestlers chained together at the neck, forced to fight in close quarters with no escape possible. Reed approached these matches with a level of intensity that seemed to go beyond what the storyline required. He appeared to genuinely enjoy inflicting punishment on his opponent in ways that made some fans uncomfortable. Reed's feuds with Terry Taylor showcased his ability to work with different personality types and wrestling styles, while helping establish Taylor as a rising star. Their rivalry spanned the spring of 1984 and featured brutal matches that demonstrated Reed's versatility as a performer. Reed attacked Taylor with a coal miner's glove on several occasions, adding a signature element to his heel tactics that fans came to expect. Reed could work as a powerhouse villain who overwhelmed opponents with strength, or as a calculating technician who picked apart his rivals with precision. This adaptability made him valuable to promoters who needed wrestlers capable of working various match styles. The psychological elements in Reed's programs often went beyond typical territory wrestling. He understood how to manipulate audiences through his character work and storytelling abilities. Reed would target specific weaknesses in his opponents, both physical and emotional, to create drama that felt personal rather than scripted. His matches incorporated elements of realism and intensity that set them apart from other promotions of the time. Reed's natural charisma and athletic made him valuable to Mid-South wrestling, regardless of any concerns about his approach to the business. His ability to generate heat and work quality matches helped carry storylines and draw money for the promotion. Bill Watts needed wrestlers who could deliver compelling television, and Reed consistently provided memorable moments that kept audiences invested. His contributions to the promotion's success were undeniable, even if his intense competitive drive sometimes created friction. Reed's willingness to push boundaries and generate intense reactions, while effective for his character, began shaping a reputation that would follow him throughout his career. His approach was more direct and confrontational than many wrestlers preferred, which worked perfectly for his heel character, but would later be scrutinized when he moved to larger promotions. Wrestling required performers to balance their individual ambitions with the needs of the overall product, and Reed's focus on creating the most compelling version of his character sometimes put him at odds with collaborative expectations. Reed's Mid-South run established him as one of wrestling's premier heels during the territory's most successful period. His feuds with the Junkyard Dog, Jim Duggan, and Terry Taylor helped define what Mid-South wrestling represented. Reed's combination of athletic ability, character work, and willingness to push controversial storylines made him an essential part of the promotion's identity. The success came with consequences that Reed might not have fully understood at the time. His reputation for intense competitiveness and boundary pushing was spreading throughout the wrestling business. Other promoters were taking notice of Reed's abilities, but they were also hearing about his uncompromising approach to his craft. This reputation would become crucial when national wrestling companies began looking for talent who could help them dominate television markets nationwide. Vince McMahon needed credible athletes who could help the WWE dominate television markets nationwide, and Reed represented exactly the kind of performer he wanted. He had legitimate athletic credentials, proven wrestling ability, and the physical presence that looked impressive on television. Reed's reputation as one of the most reliable main event heels in the territories made him an attractive prospect for the WWE's growing roster. The pairing with manager Slick seemed perfect for the WWE's entertainment-focused approach to wrestling. Slick was a charismatic manager who could handle the talking, while Reed focused on intimidating opponents through his physical presence. The combination of Reed's athletic ability and Slick's promotional skills should have created a successful heel act that could work with any of the WWE's top babyfaces. Reed entered the WWE as the natural, with expectations that he would become a major player in the promotion. Reed's debut victory over Koko B. Ware at WrestleMania 3 provided the strong start that everyone expected. WrestleMania 3 was the biggest wrestling event in history at that point, and Reed's placement on the card suggested the company had significant plans for him. The victory established Reed as a legitimate threat to other wrestlers on the roster and gave him momentum that should have carried into bigger storylines and more prominent positioning. Reed's involvement in feuds with Ricky Steamboat and his positioning near the Intercontinental title scene indicated that bigger opportunities were coming. Reed was initially slated to win the Intercontinental Championship from Ricky Steamboat, a move that would have positioned him as one of the WWE's top heel attractions. This championship opportunity represented the breakthrough moment that Reed had been working toward throughout his career. The Intercontinental Championship was the WWE's secondary singles title and often served as a stepping stone to main event status. Reed's athletic ability and heel persona made him a natural fit for championship-level storylines. The opportunity went to the Honky Tonk Man instead, marking a pivotal moment that changed the trajectory of Reed's entire WWE career. Wrestling observers and fans who had expected Reed to capture the Intercontinental title were left wondering why the company had changed direction. This decision suggested that backstage factors were influencing Reed's positioning more than his in-ring performance or fan reactions. The first Survivor Series in November 1987 placed Reed on wrestling's biggest stage alongside established WWE stars. This event was created to compete directly with Jim Crockett Promotions' Starrcade pay-per-view. Reed's inclusion in the match showed that WWE management considered him important enough to feature during a crucial battle for wrestling supremacy. The event was broadcast nationally and gave Reed exposure to the largest audience of his career. Reed was eliminated first from his Survivor Series team by Hulk Hogan, which represented an unexpected disappointment for someone who had been positioned as a serious threat. This early elimination signaled that Reed might not be receiving the sustained push that his abilities warranted. Wrestling fans who had followed Reed's territorial success were confused by his reduced role in what should have been his breakthrough opportunity. Behind the scenes, reports suggested disagreements over Reed's reliability were surfacing among WWE management. The company had invested significant time and resources in building Reed as a credible heel, but concerns about his attitude and professionalism were affecting his positioning. These backstage issues were not immediately apparent to fans, but they were influencing the creative decisions being made about Reed's character. Manager Slick later revealed the specific issues that affected Reed's standing in the company. In interviews years after their partnership ended, Slick described Reed's casual attitude toward professional responsibilities. Slick said, "Butch messed it up. Butch was the kind of guy that he didn't care. He didn't have a ride to a town, he would just sit in the lobby until somebody said, 'Well, come on, I'll take you.' There would be things like that he would do, and so they kind of grew sour on him." Reed's early elimination from the 1988 Royal Rumble and his first-round exit at WrestleMania 4 against Randy Savage seemed to signal a clear downward trajectory. His loss to Savage was particularly telling because Reed dominated most of the match against Savage, but spent too much time mouthing off to Savage's manager, Miss Elizabeth, while climbing to the top turnbuckle. Savage caught Reed, threw him off for a slam, and immediately hit his diving elbow drop for the win. This moment perfectly captured the arrogance and poor decision-making that was undermining Reed's career. The WWE's expansion era required talent who could thrive in a more controlled and politically driven environment than the territorial system. Reed's background in territories where wrestlers had more freedom and less corporate oversight may have made it difficult for him to adapt to the WWE's structured approach. The company demanded not just wrestling ability, but also compliance with corporate culture and professional standards that Reed seemed unable or unwilling to meet. Reed's WWE run proved that talent alone wasn't enough to succeed during the national expansion era. Politics, personality, and professionalism mattered just as much as athletic ability when it came to advancing in the company hierarchy. Reed departed the WWE in 1988 with his reputation damaged, but his wrestling abilities still intact. The move to WCW gave Reed a chance to rebuild his career alongside one of wrestling's most respected athletes. The pairing with Ron Simmons to form Doom represented a fresh start for Reed and an opportunity to work with someone whose reputation for professionalism and work ethic was the opposite of the concerns that had followed Reed during his WWE run. Simmons was a former college football star who had transitioned successfully into wrestling while maintaining respect throughout the wrestling business. Doom's initial run as masked wrestlers under women's management created mystery around their identities. The masks allowed both wrestlers to reinvent themselves without the baggage of their previous characters. Woman was an experienced manager who understood how to build intrigue around new wrestlers, but she soon dropped the team and left the federation. They found a new manager in Teddy Long and were then unmasked, revealing their true identities as Ron Simmons and Butch Reed. Doom wasn't just another team, it was revolutionary. A pairing of two powerful black athletes in an era still unsure how to handle that kind of presentation. But Reed and Ron Simmons weren't side characters. They were the story. The unmasking showed two legitimate athletes who could back up their intimidating presence with real wrestling ability. Reed's partnership with Simmons brought out qualities in his wrestling that hadn't been evident during his singles career. Reed and Simmons developed genuine chemistry that translated into compelling matches against the top tag teams in WCW. Their styles meshed well together, with Simmons providing technical wrestling expertise while Reed contributed power and athleticism. The partnership felt natural rather than forced, which made their matches more believable and entertaining for audiences. Their rivalry with the Steiner brothers produced some of the most physical and athletic tag team matches of the era. The Steiners were amateur wrestling champions who brought legitimate credentials to professional wrestling. Their matches with Doom showcased four athletes at the peak of their abilities, competing in contests that felt real. These encounters elevated both teams and established WCW's tag team division as one of the most competitive in wrestling. The breakthrough moment came when Doom defeated the Steiner brothers at Capital Combat to win the WCW World Tag Team Championship. This victory represented the culmination of everything Reed had been working toward throughout his career. The strategic win over such respected opponents proved that Reed could still perform at the highest level of national wrestling when given the right opportunity and partner. Doom's 281-day WCW World Tag Team Championship reign set records and validated Reed's belief that his WWE problems had been more about politics than ability. The lengthy championship run demonstrated that Reed could be trusted with important storylines when he was properly motivated. Their championship reign included successful title defenses against established teams and rising stars throughout WCW's roster. The team's appearances at major WCW events like Halloween Havoc and Starrcade gave Reed the spotlight he had been seeking throughout his career. These high-profile events allowed Reed to showcase his talents to national television audiences on a regular basis. The exposure at these events was crucial in establishing Reed as a legitimate star in WCW, rather than just another territorial wrestler. Reed's work during Doom's championship run showed what he could accomplish when his talents were properly utilized by booking committees who understood his strengths. The tag team format allowed Reed to focus on his athletic abilities without having to carry entire storylines by himself. The partnership with Simmons provided structure that helped Reed perform at his best. The partnership with Simmons brought out the best in Reed's abilities while temporarily masking the personality issues that had created problems throughout his career. Simmons's professionalism and leadership helped keep Reed focused on wrestling rather than backstage politics. The successful partnership showed what Reed could accomplish when working with someone he respected. Doom represented Reed's peak as a national wrestling star during a time when WCW was establishing itself as a legitimate alternative to the WWE. The team's success gave Reed credibility and momentum that should have carried over into other opportunities within the company. Reed had finally found the sustained national success that had been missing from his career since leaving the territories. But success in wrestling requires more than just winning matches and holding championships. It requires maintaining the relationships and professionalism that make continued success possible. Wrestle War 1991 in Phoenix should have been just another successful title defense for Doom against the fabulous Freebirds. Reed and Simmons had been champions for months and were working like a well-oiled machine. The Freebirds were experienced opponents who knew how to work with championship teams. Everything about the match seemed routine until a communication breakdown changed the trajectory of Reed's career forever. During the contest, Reed made a mistake that cost Doom the match and their WCW World Tag Team Championships. The exact details of what went wrong were never fully explained, but the miscommunication was serious enough to create immediate tension between Reed and Simmons. Reed appeared to miss a cue or execute the wrong move at a crucial moment. The error allowed the Freebirds to capitalize and win the titles in what should have been a standard championship defense. After the Freebirds left the ring, Reed immediately turned on Simmons and beat him up. This turned Simmons' face and ended the team of Doom forever. The attack shocked fans who had watched Doom dominate the tag team division for months. Reed's betrayal transformed him from half of a successful championship team into a heel who had destroyed his own partnership for reasons that weren't immediately clear to audiences. The turn revealed fundamental differences in how each wrestler approached their professional responsibilities. Simmons had built a reputation as one of the most professional wrestlers in the business. His partnership with Reed had elevated both men to championship status. Reed felt that their success should have led to better individual opportunities, while Simmons was focused on maintaining their tag team dominance. UCW management decided to capitalize on the real-life tension by booking a feud between the former partners. The feud culminated at Super Brawl 1, where Ron Simmons pinned Butch Reed in a steel cage match. The cage match was supposed to showcase both wrestlers and transition them into new storylines, but it marked the end of Reed's most successful period in national wrestling. Behind the scenes, Reed's conflicts with WCW management were becoming more frequent and more serious. The problems weren't limited to his issues with Simmons. Reed revealed that he left WCW because he didn't get along with Bill Watts, who now ran WCW's booking. According to Reed, Watts still held a grudge over Reed leaving Midsouth years earlier. This personal conflict with management created an impossible working environment for Reed. Reed's attitude and professionalism were again being questioned, just as they had been during his WWE run. Stories circulated about Reed missing meetings, showing up late to events, and arguing with officials about creative decisions. The pattern that had emerged during his time with the WWE was repeating itself in WCW. Reed's natural talent was being overshadowed by his reputation for being difficult to manage. Reed's singles career in WCW drifted toward the mid-card as younger stars like Sting, Lex Luger, and Steve Austin received the opportunities Reed felt he deserved. Reed formed partnerships with wrestlers like the Barbarian and Cactus Jack, but these teams never achieved the success that Doom had experienced. Reed's positioning on television shows declined as WCW focused on building new stars for their future. The company's decision to push younger talent made sense from a business perspective, but Reed struggled to accept his reduced role. He had been a championship-level performer just months earlier with Doom. The transition from main-event tag team competitor to mid-card singles wrestler was difficult for someone who had always believed he deserved better positioning. Reed's frustration with his declining status created additional backstage tensions. Reed managed to score a notable victory at Clash of the Champions 20, defeating Dustin Rhodes and Barry Windham. These wins showed that Reed's wrestling ability hadn't diminished, but they weren't enough to change management's perception of him. The victories felt like isolated bright spots rather than building blocks for sustained success. By the end of 1992, Reed had departed from WCW entirely. Simmons went on to become the first black WCW champion in 1992, while Reed was out of the company. The contrast between their career trajectories after Doom's breakup highlighted the different paths that talent and personality could create in professional wrestling. Reed's greatest success had become his greatest failure, and the reasons were becoming clearer to everyone in the wrestling business. The national stage had proven too demanding for someone whose approach to the business created as many problems as his abilities solved. Reed's departure from WCW forced him back to the independent wrestling circuit, where he had started his career decades earlier. Reed's final wrestling match took place in 2013 when he was 58 years old. The match demonstrated Reed's lifelong passion for wrestling and his reluctance to accept that his active career was ending. He had continued competing for over 3 decades after his professional wrestling debut. Reed's longevity in wrestling was remarkable, given the physical demands of the profession and the toll it takes on performers' bodies. Reed was included in a 2016 class action lawsuit against WWE regarding traumatic brain injuries suffered by wrestlers during their careers. The lawsuit alleged that WWE had concealed the risks of brain injuries from wrestlers who worked for the company. Reed's participation in the legal action reflected the physical toll that decades of wrestling had taken on his health. The lawsuit was ultimately dismissed in 2018, but it highlighted the long-term health consequences that many wrestlers face. Reed's death on February 5, 2021 at age 66, from heart complications marked the end of a complex wrestling legacy. The wrestling press recognized Reed's work as one half of Doom and his influence on future wrestlers. Reed had the look, the skills, and the credibility that wrestling promoters wanted. But his story shows us that personality and backstage politics often matter more than pure talent in wrestling. Like and subscribe for 100 Years of Luck. Until next time.